1987, Clive Barker's Hellraiser opened the gates of hell. The R-rated British production had a budget of $1 million and made over $14 million alone in the US. After filming, the story was moved to the States, which required dubbing to remove some annoying English accents. The directorial debut is based on Barker's novella The Hellbound Heart, which plot is almost identical, first published 1986 in Night Visions 3, a collection of short stories by different authors, from Dark Harvest Volumes 1 to 9 from 1984 to 91, and Subterranean Press Volume 10 to 12 from 2001 to 2006. With the movie, the story also appeared as a standalone book. So far there have been 10 sequels by different directors, all called Hellraiser so-and-so. Except for part 11, since that is supposed to be a TV remake, reboot whatsoever. So therefore just called Hellraiser. Another commonality, they all suck, except Hellraiser 2 Hellbound. Since part 3 US productions, and you can tell, and vary from bad to unwatchable. Of the sequels, only part 2 to 4 were shown in theaters. The rest was disposed direct to video or TV, mainly shed on the market not to lose the film rights. Quite similar to Children of the Corn, also 11 movies, from whose retrospective I could shamelessly copy the introductory text here almost one-on-one. I mean, of course, reuse climate friendly. More about the Hellraiser direct to video to garbage can sequels, the Books of Blood and Clive Barker in the same named retrospectives. Frank opens a mystery puzzle / music box aka lament configuration in anticipation of otherworldly delights, whereupon hooked chains appear and tear him apart. When brother Larry moves in with his new wife Julia, he injures himself and the blood brings Frank back. Still gruesomely disfigured, he reveals himself to Julia, his former secret lover, and explains that opening the box summons Cenobites who drag their victims into hell, where they experience endless suffering and pain for all eternity. Since these explorers from another dimension cannot distinguish between pain and pleasure, but with blood he could regenerate and be with her again. Julia now secretly brings him men which she picks up in bars to kill them afterwards together with Frank. When stepdaughter Kirsty figures it out, she barely escapes them and wakes up distraught in an hospital along with the cube. In the meantime, Frank and Julia have already killed her father, the clueless Larry, and Frank is wearing his skin. Kirsty, however, has already sold him out to the Cenobites, since she accidentally opened the cube, which resulted in a deal with Pinhead, who now want to take Frank in exchange for her, if she manages that he reveals himself. The fantastic soundtracks by Christopher Young, he also scored Hellbound, are among the best in film music. Since part 3, the main theme of part 1 was simply copied, supplemented with other music, or didn't appear at all. When I saw Hellraiser for the first time on video, I already knew the title from my film magazine at the time and immediately got the soundtrack and the ingenious movie poster, which to this day is one of only 2 posters that still decorate my wall. Hellraiser is, similar to The Thing or Evil Dead 2, one of the best horror movies of all time, which had a huge influence on the genre. Excellently cast, extremely excitingly staged, with spectacular practical effects. In my opinion, it is an extremely faithful adaptation of the very good original, with rather insignificant differences. For example, Larry is called Rory. In Hellbound Heart, there are somewhat clearer rules for hell, whose involuntary inhabitants are allowed, for example, to observe the place of their entry, which is why Frank noticed when Julia entered the room for the first time. The 2 brothers also have kind of similar voices in the book, which is why Kirsty doesn't immediately recognize him. In addition, the explanation for his escape is also more conclusive, since in the book he left something in the room. His sperm, from which he was kind of reborn in combination with the blood. There the Cenobites, except for the initiator who has female features, have no names, and there is also no Pinhead, who was only given a name and legend thanks to the intro of Hellbound. The cube is also pitch black, completely smooth and has no ornamentation whatsoever. In the book, Jesus sheds no tears at the end.
Jesus wept.
However, the reader does, with laughter, when, as in my original German edition, he is suddenly served in mid-sentence an advertisement for Maggie's 5-minute terrine. What the hell? There are less murders, nor Julia on the mattress. In the book, her head is in the initiator's lap at the end. No silly 80s lightning effects in the final. The Cenobites just let Kirsty go. No boyfriend, no pet shop, and no insect-eating tramp/dragon monster grabbing the cube. This one remains handed over by the initiator with Kirsty.
What's your pleasure, sir?
In 1988, Hellbound continues the story, with the same cast except for Larry Cotton actor Andrew Robinson aka Garak from DS9. Kirsty wakes up in a psychiatric clinic run by Dr. Chenard, for years secretly researching the puzzle box. By using the mattress from part 1, he retrieves Julia and helps her regenerate in exchange for information. She betrays him and delivers him to Hell, a complicated labyrinth whose ruler, Leviathan, turns Chenard into a powerful Cenobite. Meanwhile, Kirsty, with the help of the initially mute Tiffany, who is used by the Doctor to solve the puzzle box, wants to free her father from Hell. But she finds out that the supposed call for help came from Uncle Frank. After the victorious fight of the Doctor over the old Cenobites, Kirsty and Tiffany seem to be trapped. Since special effects expert, among other things, escaped from New York, Tony Randell's directorial debut here in Germany, despite release for 18 and older plus indexing by our Ministry of Thought, got still torn to pieces. Yet almost 10 minutes were missing.
We'll tear your soul apart.
We had to get it, like almost every horror or action film, uncut from a foreign country. By the way, this also applied to things deliberately dubbed wrong by the regime, like Planet of the Apes, Starship Troopers, and so on. Parts 1 and 2 are on the famous shortlist, where it's easier for a movie to wank itself out of hell, like Frank, than getting on this list. Hellbound is one of the best sequels of all time, and acts to Hellraiser like Aliens to Alien or T2 to T1. More elaborate, faster paced, higher gore count, with a new terrifying genius villain, almost invincible like the T-1000, and for fantasy surprisingly conclusive. Very good story and an almost infinite amount of crazy ideas. It even holds up much better than the more recent T2, much like Aliens, as it was one of the last major productions to still use mostly practical effects, stop motion and so on. Before excessive CGI virtually removed elaborate films from the art category and basically made them unwatchable. I watch Hellbound a lot more often than Hellraiser because it doesn't have a botched, completely unnecessarily drawn out final. Exactly the opposite is Anthony Hickok's ground zero of the franchise annihilation, Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, which basically pulverizes the legacy of the two horror giant towers, which it was supposed to continue meaningfully on 9/11, 1992, with except for Pinhead, who is the focus here, a completely new cast, and Terry Farrell aka Jadzia Dex, also like Garak from DS9, my favorite Star Trek by the way, in the lead. More about Star Trek in my same named 4-part retrospective. TV journalist Joey witnesses a man being torn apart by air chains in an emergency room and comes into possession of the puzzle box during her research. The Soul column, in which Pinhead was apparently banished, ends up in a discotheque. He frees himself with the help of the owner, God, it looks also cheap and shit, and wants to resurrect the hell that was taken from him now on Earth. Joey tries to stop the horror with the help of Elliot Spencer, Pinhead's human side. But the demon sends camera head, CD launcher, cocktail mixer. This thing is one illogical, laughless, shat out, completely miscast piece of shit. Compared to its predecessors, it comes across like a TV movie with gore inserts. And the horrible morphing effects looked already back then fake as fuck. Pinhead has no pins anymore but thick nails in his head? So nailhead or what? And is he degraded to Dr. Evil who strives for world domination? Jadzia Dex in a nightgown on the battlefield reminds of an Ed Wood theater production.
On that battlefield today, I saw this woman dressed in white.
His Cenobite gang are just a Halloween joke. Rules are just made up as they went along and nobody gives a crap on his self-struggle. I hate this US garbage. What many normies do not understand when it comes to film series, and this is especially true for producers, is that not always the god-awful sequel is directly the flop. It often profits from the excellent predecessor, which, back then also thanks to video, has generated a huge interest for the next one. As an example, Nightmare 3, which was excellent, but was topped at the box office by Nightmare 4, which was absolute bullshit. The somewhat more tolerable Nightmare 5 took the fall, making only half than its predecessors. Thanks to this phenomenon, many real franchise killers often manage to remain undiscovered for too long, and their talentless hack directors stay in business for years. Since by the box office numbers, Hellraiser 3 made more money than Part 2. In 1996, Alan Smythe's Hellraiser 4 Bloodline made significantly less than its predecessors. In 2127, a descendant of Marchand, the builder of the first puzzle box on behalf of a rich sadist/sorcerer, tries to lure Pinhead and his Cenobites into a trap with a prepared space station to take revenge for the death of all his ancestors. In the process, a task force gets in his way shortly after he summons Pinhead. To buy time, he tells the story of his ancestors and their fight against the Cenobites, starting with the creation of the box in 1796, with which the demon Angelique was summoned, which develops in the course of the plot, no idea why, to the opponent of Pinhead. Since she, and also here no clue why, she constantly kills people for no reason, especially the Marchands, at some point also only wants that everything finally ends. In principle, like the tortured viewer, while Pinhead wants to maintain the status quo regardless, so he acts like the greedy producers. He also tells about the 1996 failed attempt of another sequel called Bloodline, of course, a first trap in the form of an anti-cube building. Probably grown from the cube that Jetsia Dex carefully planted in wet cement at the end of Raiser 3 Turds on Earth and has been watering ever since? Who knows. This anti-cube should neutralize the original cube to close the gates of hell forever, although the box actually had nothing to do with it, since it became first magic with the spell of Barak Wighead. Space Razor 4 plot hole line is basically an even worse disaster than Part 3, since here first-time movie director Kevin Yeager, so far only 2 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, left the project early due to studio interferences, which is why some scenes from the trailers don't even appear in the movie, and Alan Smythe had to take the fall. And later TV specialist Joe Chappelle, until then only Halloween 6 The Curse of Michael Myers, then finally fucked up the rest, which was then outside the States in many countries quietly disposed on video, even in England. Nevertheless, the basic idea was at least better than the Carnival Razor 3 crap, since with the origin of the box at least a few scenes have anything to do with Hellraiser. It failed in the end because of 2 inexperienced/incompetent directors for the too ambitious project laid out over 3 time periods and a budget that was far too low for it. Helltrack 4, where no script has gone before except Critters 4 of course, already in 1992, is still 2001 compared to the things to come.